Redditors who've walked in on your partner or significant other cheating. How did you react in that moment? Went to her apartment. Saw her fucking with some guy I'd never seen before. Before I can say anything, she says it isn't what it looks like. I crack up, who the hell even says that when they're caught cheating? While I'm laughing, I manage to ask her what it is if it's not what it looks like. After a little bit where she tries to come up with an excuse, I tell her we're through and walk out. Weirdest 5 minutes of that year. Somewhat similar experience here. But luckily I was of sound mind enough to come up with something that would ruin their moment. I had actually come home a week earlier than I was supposed to from the Air Force. This was a good 15 years ago, and figured I'd surprise her since she'd always talk about how much she misses me, would always send me pictures of her in the mail and write these long letters talking about our future together. Naturally I assumed she would be more than excited to see me walk in the door a week early. Pulled up to the house and figured she was home because her car was there, so I was as quiet as possible. Even parked my car down the street a little so she didn't see me pull up and ruin the surprise. Quietly put the key in the lock and slowly twisted. Opened the door and the living room was dark. I thought maybe she got picked up by some friends and went out somewhere. Oh, well, even better. I'll set up our room by going to get some flowers and making everything look all romantic and irresistible. Hey, it's been a few months. I was a bit pinned up at that point. Start walking towards the bedroom and I hear this rhythmic squeaking noise followed by a deep grunt. My instinct reaction was someone broke in and trying to rip something off the wall, so I went into ass-kicking mode until a few seconds later I heard a high-pitched moan of a female. Yeah. I recognized that sound pretty well and knew what was happening. Being in the military, I knew the worst possible thing I could do was anything violent, so I wanted to fuck up whatever moment they were having. I walked towards the room very quietly while they went at it. Of course they didn't hear me because they were far too deep in their actions. Luckily the door was halfway open, so I got down and started crawling towards the bed out of their line of sight, slithered over to the edge of the bed they were closest to and started slowly inching my head up the side until just my eyes were above the edge. It took her a good minute, she was on the bottom, before she looked over and saw angry eyes staring at her. She freaked out so bad that she kicked the dude in the face and he fell off the bed and hit his head on the wall. She screamed louder than I've heard anyone scream in my life and bounced off the bed in a flailing, sweaty mess, and I heard her ass hit the ground with a satisfying thud. I stood up and the guy was in a heap on the floor, scared shitless at this dude in full military garb standing over him with crazy eyes. She finally realized who it was and started bawling her eyes out saying, "I'm so sorry. I was lonely. Blah blah blah. Who cares?" I started laughing hysterically and all I said was, "Well dude, she's your problem now. Hope you don't mind herpes." Walked out and blocked her from my life. Only to go on and date someone else who made my life miserable for the next 12 years. I really know how to pick them. I broke, man. I literally felt something in me die. This was 5 years ago, and only in the last 8-9 months have I felt better about it. I walked into my apartment, and her ex-husband were in my bed. Which was a huge fuck you to me, cause they both had their own places. So, I walk in, see them, grab him by the throat, I know, and drag him outside and throw him into the parking lot. I'm a big dude, I'm 6'8", 220. So I throw him into the parking lot, and she's yelling at me, "Please don't kill him. WTF. I just wanted him out of my house. I wasn't going to hurt or kill the guy." She's running around, picking up her things, and his things, and shouting excuses at me. "Oh, it was just a one-time thing, we were bored and it was a mistake, we were drinking this morning and this was stupid, who fucking drinks in the morning, anyway?" I just looked at her and said, "Don't ever speak to me again. You fucking disgust me." Then, I fell onto my couch and cried. She was standing there, watching me, and she tried to walk over and hug me, because now she's crying too. I pushed her away from me. I cried non-stop for the rest of the day. Fell into a deep depression, started doing painkillers, drinking, pretty much every drug I could get my hands on. I hurt so bad, mentally, that it was physically crippling. The hardest part wasn't even breaking up with her, it was not talking to her daughter, who was going to be my stepdaughter. I was even saving to buy the ring. Me and her were buds, man. We went everywhere together. I took her to preschool, we'd go to the mall every Friday and get ice cream, I'd buy her some toys, or some clothes, whatever struck my eye. I've since moved to a different state. Got a good job, got my life back together. Have an amazing girlfriend. She looks at me with love, and I look at her, and I see hope in her eyes. It took years, but things finally actually turned around. I just left and cut all contacts to her, her friends, and her family. She then 6 months later came knocking on my door asking for me back. I opened the door, looked her in the eyes as she was crying, begging for a second chance. I didn't say anything and just closed the door on her. Came home early from visiting a buddy so I could surprise my girlfriend. I was the one that got the surprise. Found her and a dude asleep in my bed. Calmly walked up to the side of the bed, gently woke her up and asked if she wanted pancakes. She must not have realized what was going on, said, "Hey baby, sure." I said, "What about him? Does he like pancakes?" The look on her face was worth every second of the shitstorm that kicked up after that. I walked in after a 10-hour shift at work. They were on the couch, she was under him. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a glass of something to drink. Walked back into the living room. I told him to stay a bit because she would need help moving out. I told her to pack her shit. Then I sat down in my chair and turned on the TV. It took all of an hour for her to get her shit. The dude left immediately. She bawled her eyes out while sitting at my feet. Commercials came on and I looked at her and asked, "What the hell are you still doing here?" I shut down. It was strange feeling. For a moment in my life I just didn't care. My buddy was dating a girl for a year. Came back to her apartment one night and found a dude in her bed with her. So he did the only logical thing, pissed all over them and then forced himself to puke on them all before they woke up. Man, college had some great memories. Got back from seeing my family down south and went to her house to let our dog out since she was at work and I wanted to see the pup. I walk in and hear noises coming from the bedroom and thought that was odd. I go to investigate thinking the dog was tearing something up. Open the door to see a fat ginger beard balls deep in my girlfriend. She makes eye contact and screams she's sorry. He looks bewildered and just overall confused and the dog was barking and causing a fuss. I threw my hands up in the air and said fuck this and walked out. Came home early from night shift to find her in bed with what I originally thought might have been her mom. Walked up to the bed to make sure the alarm was set, and noticed that either her mom was a lot hairier than I thought or it was a guy. So I sat down on the edge of the bed, turned the side lamp on thinking okay don't lose it. Turned the bedside lamp on, turned the radio on the alarm clock up to max volume. She opens her eyes, and looks up, looks over the other side of the bed, the dude is starting to wake up. I just look at her, shake my head sadly, got up and left. Didn't say a word. Left everything in the house and started anew. I was in college, dating a football player at a school where football is king. I had never dated an athlete before, and of course I had heard warnings, but he just seemed so nice, and he was cute and fun and I was naive. One night I decided to stop by his dorm room as a surprise. I get there and there is a girl in the hall, crying and banging on his door. I ask her what is up. She explains to me that she is his girlfriend, but he has locked himself in his dorm room with another woman, and she is devastated at catching him cheating like this. So in other words, in one moment, I found out my boyfriend had 2 other girlfriends at the same time. I was upset but really, I just had to laugh. Okay life, you got me. Never again. It was a great learning experience. I posted this in a different thread a while ago. About 14 years ago, I caught a girl I was dating for about 6 months blowing some guy in a bedroom at a party we went to. I walked in, saw her and said well, we're pretty much done. Turned and walked out. I was walking out of the house and she chased me down. She started yelling at me that it was my fault I caught her and I shouldn't be mad because she was trying to hide it. My wife and I had her as a waitress last year and she's still mad at me. She walked to our table, saw it was me and walked off. About 2 minutes later a different person was our server. I didn't do anything, I just walked out. Then amazingly her 1-year-old BMW convertible spontaneously combusted. Walk upstairs, he's walking out of his room in his boxers and closes the door behind him, tells me he's late for work and still has his hand on the doorknob and won't let go. I already know why. I put my hand over his on the knob and he just looks at me, sighs and sort of runs down the stairs. I open the door and just see a heap of blankets and the comforter I had just given him for Christmas, in the shape of a person. I pull the comforter off, see a naked girl half awake. I turn around, run downstairs and see his mom on the couch reading the newspaper. Yes, he did this while he was still living at home. I ask her where he went. She can tell I'm pretty hysteric and asks me what's wrong. I tell her I need to know where he went. She points to the bathroom. I run to it and it's locked. I take out my bobby pin from my hair, unlock it and jiggle open the door. I pitifully start hitting his chest while crying and he's just standing there. Then I realize I just need to get out of there, so I run for the front door but his mother, totally unaware of what's going on, is standing in the door frame, not letting me by until I tell her what's wrong. I run under her arm and out the door to school. One of the worst memories ever. Side note, his mom kicked him out after she realized what happened. My slutty ex, in my bed, in my apartment. I didn't say anything for a good 5 to 10 seconds, just let them stare at me awkwardly. Then I said alright, 3-way. And started to strip. Never have I seen a dude get dressed and disappear so fast. She followed him shortly after once I had my apartment key back in my possession. Haven't seen or heard from her since. Walked over to her car and wondered why she wasn't getting out. When I got to the window I saw her head in his lap. I froze, then turned around, walked back to my car and punched it a few times. We had one of those relationships where we'd break up and get back together every couple weeks and I guess we were technically off that weekend. But still it felt like being punched for the next few days. We didn't get back together after that because I finally developed some self-respect. This was not me, but rather was one of my best employees at the company I ran. Hank was a hard-working guy who preached at church on Sundays but did odd jobs throughout the week to make ends meet for his wife and 3 kids. One day, he comes home early and finds his wife in bed with her lover. He opened a drawer, drew his pistol and put a few rounds into each of them. She survived, he didn't. Manslaughter was a 10-year sentence, but he tells me with good behavior he only did about 8. She obviously has a restraining order against him for the rest of his life, but she lets him see the kids at Christmas. He was a pretty good worker, but when he stared into my eyes and told me he wasn't digging no hole with a shovel, I decided to give him other jobs. Fought him. Broke shit. Walls. Door. Arrested. 6 charges. Hefty lawyer bill. $20,000 later, so not worth it. Walk the fuck away and move on with your life. Not exactly me who called her but, a friend of mine who lived in my building sold weed and as a precaution he had security cameras set up to watch our front door. He had me come over and watch the footage one night. He tells me that when I go to work some big black guy knocks on the window and my then girlfriend lets him in. Sure enough we watched the video and for the several days he had recorded, like clockwork I go to work and about half an hour later here comes dude knocking and her letting him in. I decided that the next day I skip work and leave like normal but catch them. I left for work but instead went to my friend's apartment and watched the video. After a bit here came dude knocking. After she let him in I waited about 15 minutes then quietly went back. I snuck in and there they were in the living room, him on the couch, her on her knees sucking his dick. I freaked them out, he jumped up and left, she cried and said she was sorry and had a problem. Turns out dude was a crack dealer and she was sucking and fucking for crack. She told me it was only once and a mistake. I told her my buddy had it on video for at least a week and she says, he needs to mind his own fucking business. I promptly kicked the bitch out and thanked my buddy for saving me from a terrible situation. I walked in on my longtime live-in boyfriend and my really good friend having sex in my bed. It was so strange, zero emotion. I just walked through my bedroom, and started pulling my clothes out of the closet in silence. She was mortified, apologizing. I said, "Don't worry about it. He's your problem now." Packed up everything that was important to me, walked out, never came back. Moved in with my girlfriends and my life changed radically for the better. He wasn't an evil person, just a profoundly stupid loser that I thought was cool when I was 16, he was 21. We lived together for 2 super lame years. She did me a gigantic favor. She went on to have multiple kids by multiple fathers. She fucked our other best friend's fiancé. She was super trashy. After having all of those kids, she wound up going back to and marrying my ex, who now supports those kids on his Walgreens stock boy wages. The same job he had when I met him nearly 30 years ago. I wish them both well. And I'm so glad I'm not either of them. Seriously, I'm so happy that they fucked that night. We would have broken up eventually, but I might have wasted a few more years on that giant null of a relationship. Was dating a guy who lived in the same apartment as me, don't shit where you eat, folks, named Dave. He was dating this girl Kara when we met, so we were only friends, but we just had this chemistry between us that was insane. A couple weeks later he broke up with Kara. A couple more weeks pass and he kisses me. We start seeing each other more often after that. There was a big football game on, probably an FSU game, and we had about 10 people over to watch it. Dave was running late because he had to work late. He walks in the door and one of his buddies yells, "Hey man, how was Kara's?" I look at Dave, he looks at me. I turn to the TV and sit there for a couple minutes. Then I left. The next day he caught me as I was walking to my car. I turned to him and very casually told him we should just be friends, then I winked, said bada bing and shot him with each of my pointer fingers. I just started laughing as I walked away because I had never done that before and I honestly just thought it was really funny. Then I went home and cried like a bitch. I showed up at a party and all of his friends were acting weird and wouldn't tell me where my BF was. When I tried to get in a room, they blocked my way. I knew he was in there. I got past his friends and opened the door. There was my boyfriend of 4 years, naked, with a naked chick on top of him. I grabbed her by her hair and yanked her off of him and onto the floor. Then I picked her up by her hair, slammed her face into the wall and dragged her out to the party. I left her naked on the floor, calling her a slut because she knew he was my boyfriend. I went back to the room, yelled at him and then left the party. On the way out I ripped his side view mirror off and threw a rock at his windshield. I've since learned how to deal with my anger. I brought home groceries one evening after work, and found my boyfriend fucking what I think was his coworker. I only ever met her once. Mind you, this is in my apartment, in my bed, which just made everything that much worse. He still lived with his parents at the time. The entire scenario became extremely stupid after that. I dumped an entire gallon of milk all over them and chucked everything humanly possible within grabbing range. Looking back, it was kind of awesome clocking the chick in the head with a package of hot dogs, and no matter how soft bread is, it hurts when you throw a loaf of it squarely at someone's dick. They left half naked, in the snow. I never returned their belongings they left behind. He's now married to her, so fuck if I know what happened. I'm sure they can tell their kids we bonded over groceries. I was in the Navy and was out on deployment for 6 months after just recently getting engaged. It's one of those stupid things that young military guys do. One day I get a letter from my fiance's best friend telling me that she caught my fiance and her boyfriend together. This was years before email and smartphones were common. We write back and forth several times and eventually it comes out how she caught them, how my fiance begged her not to tell me, and that the fiancé didn't know that we were corresponding. I eventually get back to the States and plan to play it off as though I didn't know, but too many of my friends intercepted me with the news that it wasn't just the one guy, but several, and let me know that she knew that I was aware. Eventually we met, and the confrontation was minimal and tame. We broke off the engagement without a lot of drama. She kept the ring. The best friend and I ended up hooking up, at first as sort of a revenge fuck kind of thing, but turned serious. We celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary this year. Some years ago I was sharing a house with my girlfriend and another female roommate. I decided to go home for lunch, which was out of the ordinary for me. Got home and could hear sex from the roommate's room. Tiptoed back to the kitchen, fixed a sandwich, cut it in half, and my roommate walked in the front door. We look at each other and a sad frown overtakes her face. Sandwich still in hand, I walk into the roommate's bedroom and my girlfriend is straddling some guy and they are both frozen with fear. I throw the sandwich halves at my ex, both hitting her square in the face. She runs over and starts hitting me and the guy escapes through a window. He was wearing only a t-shirt. After about 10 minutes listening to her sob and blame everything on me, we hear sirens. Apparently a man with no pants had pulled out into fast-moving traffic and caused a huge accident. Sent her pictures of me fucking her sister.